everyone. Welcome back to Chats with Kat on the Voice of Adoptees podcast. I'm your host, Kat. I hope you're all having a wonderful week so far. Don't forget to grab your coffee, tea, or preferred beverage and settle on in. I'm currently here with Kaitlyn. She is an athletic counselor. She embraces motivation in order to inspire others to live their best lives. Welcome. It's so great to have you on here. And
thank you.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I'm honestly very excited. This was a really exciting interview that I was really looking forward to. For me, it's really great to have you here and just briefly introduce everybody to who you are. And for those of us who are listening, let's get to hear a little bit more about you.
Perfect. Well, again, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited about what you guys are doing. So my name is Kaitlyn. My husband and I adopted our beautiful son about a year ago now. Like you said, I'm a counselor, former athlete. We've had our struggles with infertility. That's not why we adopted, but that has a part in why we adopted. And yeah, that's about it.
So you say it's part of the reason that you adopted. What else is there besides infertility? I know a lot of adoptive parents go through a lot of different things. Some do it for infertility. Some just want to adopt. They prefer to adopt. So what was it for you specifically?
So me and my husband, before we even got married, we both talked about how we wanted to adopt. His brother is adopted, and for him, he loved that part of his life. And for me, I just always had that desire in my heart. And, I think infertility led us to adopt earlier, but I think most adoptive parents would say that, you step into adoption for one reason and it becomes something different for you. I know for me, I knew that I didn't want to start the adoption process out of a place of I can't get pregnant.
Right.
Because then that's just I'm bringing my pain into bringing a child into this world, But once we did adopt, whenever I would share why we adopted, I did have a lot of, so I would say I had 2 miscarriages and we couldn't get pregnant. And some adoptees got pretty upset with that. They took it as I was being selfish, and I totally get why they saw that, But at this point, my heart in adopting our son was to help his birth mom, to give him a life he may not have been able to have. I don't know the life that he would have had he been with his birth mom. It could have been great. It could have been really hard, but it's more in giving my son the best life I would hope he could have.
Right. So I think most adoptive parents go into this with that mentality where they see it as, I want to give this child that I feel is deserving a better life than maybe they would have had. And I think that's obviously something, as an adoptee myself, that's not commonly thought of as an adoptee. We kind of see it as, you're ripping us away from a life that we could have had with our biological family. So I can understand where it comes from on the adoptee scale, but I also see it from the adoptive parent scale, because my parents adopted me. My mom was unable to have children, and she really loved children. She loved them so much. She was a teacher. So she was an elementary school teacher. So for her, children were just a source of happiness, joy, and she wanted to add to that. I also think that when we discovered you, we found you on TikTok, and you had a video that went viral basically talking about a reason why you adopted. And I know that there was, like you just mentioned, a lot of feedback, a lot of different types of feedback. And obviously there would be positive and negative feedback from adoptive parents and the adoptive community. It's, there's kind of this divide that is going on with between the two. And so what were on both sides, what were top comments? What were comments that everybody was hearting from the perspective of an adoptee parent and from the perspective of the adoptees themselves?
Right. So the one that went viral was whenever we first saw our son, and there was tons of different opinions. Some adoptees, they were like, I wish I could have seen this like from my parents, or like, this, I'm adopted, I love this beautiful, like different things like that. And then there was other people that were very angry that I shared it, and I can see their side at this point in my life, like at this point in our journey, where they're like, this is trauma, this was his birth mom's worst day, different things like that. And I I almost took it down so many times because it caused so much pain for so many people, but it also caused so much joy for other people.
Right.
So I'm so stuck in the middle, and I was out. Yeah, it made me super nervous because I don't want to hurt anyone. Like,
Right.
that was not my heart, because at in that moment, and I hope this does not sound selfish, but that was like the best moment of my life. Like, I could get emotional. Like, I love my son so much. I really do, and it was. I can't even watch that video now because it's like it brings back so much. It brings back so much joy and pain because I really felt for his mom, his birth mom, and I still do. I don't I don't know what she was going through, like, it's a closed adoption because that's what she desired, and there's nothing we could, like, I just wanna wrap my arms around her and give her the biggest hug and make sure she's okay.
Right.
And, I was so scared that he was missing her, which I'm sure he was, like, and that's all these things are out of my control. But yeah.
So you bring up a few really interesting points. On the side of the adoptees, now I have a TikTok. I've had trouble logging in, so I haven't been able to like read the comments. And I kind of steer away from them just because I feel like everyone is allowed to feel what they're feeling.
Absolutely.
And that being said, like I have my own feelings about my tumultuous journey through adoption, through my adoption. There was a time where it was very, very difficult, where I feel I can relate to those negative comments. But I also, at this point in my life, at 31, I can relate to a more positive outlook on my adoption. And I see just how strong and resilient it made me through all the tumultuous times that I had been through with my adoptive parents. And I think it's interesting because something I used to think of was my biological mother. And to bring up, like, oh, that's the hardest day in the biological mother sphere, to see that you're so conscious of that, I feel is not necessarily something that a lot of adoptive parents may consider. And
Mhm.
it's really touching for me to hear that. And I think, for other adoptees who are listening to this, there are many, many adoptive parents who do take into consideration the adoptive, like the biological parent.
Yeah.
Many, many adoptive parents keep in mind about the biological family. And this being said, maybe some of the fears of the adoptee community are that you, as an adoptive parent, kind of want to keep the child closed off from their biological parent. And so, what is your personal view for your child on that? Like, is this something where you would want them to have contact and encourage it?
Yes. Well, at this point, so she wanted a closed adoption. That from the start, that's not what we wanted. But like, we couldn't change that because we had to respect what she desired. But we also get like, let the agency know, like, if she changes her mind and she wants an open adoption, we will gladly accept that and like bring her. I don't even know how that would look at this point, but we would invite her into our home, whatever it would look like. But I want him. Me and my husband dig as much as we can with the agency. Like, we want to know as much as we can, just because of like what she desired. They can't like tell us much, but we dig hard because we want that for him. We want that. We want him to know who he came from, what, like, and they let us know that at 24. I don't know how. I don't know any about any other state, but in the state of Louisiana, at 24, he can get his original birth certificate,
Okay.
and he can find out more information to how I want that for him if he wants that. Because I mean, what a disservice we would be doing to him if we just like wouldn't let him know where he came from. Like, he's So his mom is from Honduras, so he's Hispanic and we are white.
Right.
And I foresee that, like possibly that's going to be an issue for him. But I don't know, it's different for everybody and I don't want to like place that on him.
Right.
So like my husband knows some Spanish. I don't really know any, so we're learning Spanish. We want to like incorporate as much as like where he came from. He was born in the States, but his mom is not from here. But like his culture, what he would have been brought up in, we want to incorporate that as much as we can. So,
I think that's really beautiful. So, because for me personally, growing up, my heritage is something that my mom really shied away from. Like, she did not want me to find out about my biological family, didn't want me to maintain all the different holidays and basically just stay close to my heritage. I wasn't even allowed to learn my language. I had to learn a different language instead. So, for me, I personally find it very comforting, and I hope it's comforting to those who are listening and watching this, that there are parents out there who are just so open and so supportive, and they want you to know your heritage. It's, it's part of who you are. And I think that's just a really beautiful thing because I don't think it's a very common thing. Um, so you're talking about closed adoption. Can we talk a little bit about what the difference is between a closed adoption versus an open adoption for those of us who only know one term versus the other?
right. Yeah. So closed is we have no we have no contact. They let us know very little about her. And saying that like I fear that people are like, "Oh, this is like some bad scam," but I promise it's not, like
I get,
do you know what I mean?
I do.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because I would never partake in something like that. Like this is like it's a very trusted agency, and they are very integrity is very important to them. And an open adoption, I think that usually that looks different for every family. I've seen like we were presented cases where the birth mom just wanted pictures and maybe a phone call every now and then. Other ones wanted like a once a year visit. So it just kind of depends on what the birth mom wants and what the adoptive parents agree to.
right.
Yeah. I do know some adoptive parents that they're like, no, we don't want the adoptive, I mean, the birth parents or anything to be involved. And I'm like, how? How could you? How? I don't know. That's just not my view on like what is healthiest for anyone. Like, but
Right. So I think a point I want to like really touch on is exactly what you just said about how like there are adoptive parents who I feel, and I agree with you, where they're doing a disservice to their child by not necessarily wanting them to know about their biological family. Also,
mm-hmm,
for those of us who are listening who are maybe internationally adopted, I was adopted from Russia, and my case was a closed adoption case. And that is because of the government. It had nothing to do with my biological mom. So, in America, in the States at least, I'm not sure, but
mm-hmm,
I feel that there is more likely of a potential open adoption case where that's really up to the biological parent, like you just said. And, if there is a closed adoption case and it is up to the biological parent, what do you think are some ways that you as a parent can really try to help your child through that? Like so for those who have adopted from the States where the biological parent doesn't want anything to do with their biological child, what can you
mm-hmm,
as adopted parents do to help heal your child or to help support your
mm-hmm.
that you are adopting and you are taking them in because you really love them and you want the best for them and you would prefer the open adoption, but it's out of your hands.
Right. Yeah. I personally think you need to first go to therapy.
Right.
That's what I work on my own things, like my own feelings and my sadness for his birth mom that she may or may not have. I really don't know. My counselor sometimes is like, I think you're like overdoing it.
Mm,
Because sometimes I get sad for her. And there's a possibility that she is feeling at peace and she is relieved. But I don't know. So I think like doing your own work on yourself, be honest with your child, like sometimes there are open adoptions where maybe the biological parent isn't in the best place, like maybe they're struggling with addiction or mental health, and that I'm not sure how to navigate. That's hard because you don't want your child to be traumatized, but you don't want to not let them see it. So I don't, that would be a hard one to navigate if I'm completely honest. But I think the biggest thing is like honesty. And, my son's only a year old yet. And like I try to like practice now speaking to him like I have books about adoption and like children's books that we can read to him and just like I don't know, just speaking life over him. That was something that I tried to do like from the very jump. Like,
Right.
you are wanted. You're wanted by your birth mom. Like she loved you so much, still loves you. Even though I never got to speak with her, I just know that in my heart.
Right.
So yeah, honesty, do your own work and speak life over your child.
Yeah, because a lot of a misconception that a lot of adoptees have, and for some adoptees, maybe perhaps it is true. It was not true in my case. There's just this notion that when you are adopted, you are not wanted. You were orphaned. You were not, you were given up because you were not wanted by your biological family. I personally
Mhm.
don't always think that that is the case. A lot of the time, it's that you were wanted, but the situation that the biological parents, whoever find themselves in is just not able, they are not able to support their child. And it is very difficult to obviously give your child up. Any parent who has children, period, whether they're their own, whether they are adopted, understand that. I'm not a parent, but I have a dog, and even like if I were to give her up, like it would be very difficult. I look at her like she's my child. Um,
Yeah.
so, it's hard because basically what I'm trying to say is when you as a parent, when you as an adoptive parent, when you as an individual form an attachment to somebody else, you hold on to it. You don't want to just relinquish that. You don't want to give that away. And there are just situations where you can't necessarily help yourself. And a lot of adoptive parents go into this with like I've said, like wanting to give their child a better life, wanting to do right by the child and right obviously by the biological parent. And for me, I think it's a really beautiful thing. It comes with a lot of like tumultuous feelings that, the adoptive child has to work through. And I think you are doing it in the right way where you are starting young, you are being very open about your child being adopted, and you are incorporating again their heritage, and you are reading these beautiful books. Like I never had that growing up. And I think a key thing for adoptive parents and adoptees is to form this relationship around the adoption itself, to openly talk about it with your child, with your parent. I feel like that can only strengthen the relationship, and that can strengthen your understanding of adoption. I feel like a lot of tumultuous feelings happen when it's kind of hidden, or, adoptive parents live by their fears. You know, what are some of your fears as an adoptive parent for your child that you have either had during the process and then afterwards? Like now that you have the child, do you have any sort of fears?
So whenever we first adopted him, so the first so in the state of Louisiana, which is where we live,
Right.
adoptions aren't like final, like the court, until 6 months. And so for the first 5 months, I was terrified that they were going to take him,
Right.
that I was going to do something wrong. I was so scared that whenever that TikTok went viral, that they were going to come and take AJ. I was like, it was the most irrational things. But our social worker, she's a godsend. Like our whole process, which I know a lot of people can't say this, but our process through our home study was therapeutic. It was healthy. It was so good. She just like validated so many things and like called out so many things that I was afraid of. Like there was a point where I was terrified to sleep train my son because I was so scared to have him like cry at all. You know, I was scared that I was going to mess up our attachment. I was there was points where I would like get lost like in places that I know because I was so sleep deprived.
Mm.
So at 10 months we sleep trained him and he was just like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll sleep. So it was like just this irrational fear. I guess one fear for like the future is that maybe he would be upset with us for I don't know. I don't want to speak that, but like that he would really struggle with it, but I have no control over that. And if he does struggle with his adoption, I'm going to help him in any way that I can.
Right.
I'm going to give him the best counselors that I can. I'm going to sit with him. I'm going to let him tell me all the things that he's mad about, that he's upset about, that he wants to know, and try to answer any question that I can. But really, I just want to in the future be able to sit with him and let him just tell me all those things. No matter how bad it hurts me, this is about him.
I mean, for me, I feel like you are a lot more empathetic than a lot of other adoptive parents. You're doing a great job. I know you're very nervous over receiving potential backlash and things like that over this, and I can sense it. I can feel it through the screen. And, I understand why you feel that way, especially like after the viral TikTok. People,
Mm-hmm.
you cannot control how each individual is going to feel. You cannot control how your child will feel. It is out of your hands, like you said. And I know on your Instagram you put a lot of emphasis on your faith. And
Mm-hmm.
how has that helped you? How has that guided you through the process? Sort of,
Yeah, brought a lot of comfort. I mean, like whenever we first adopted him, and I was really struggling, like with if he was missing his mom, if his mom was missing him, if she was okay, like I really had to dig into like praying with AJ and praying with my husband. That has been a huge thing, like in the process of adopting and also like after we adopted him. It's just brought me peace and comfort. And, like we pray for his mom, his birth mom,
Mm.
every single day. We read the word with him. We pray over him. We pray over his future that he would, that like just embrace who he is. Like we pray about our walk with him, like how we can best serve him.
So I want to go a little bit into your mind. If you were to picture your mind, like what does it look like? Is it a hallway? Is it a house? Is it an apartment? Like I want to go into your mind as an adoptive parent for a second and
Mm-hmm.
kind of unpack everything that's in there and kind of, look through the different things that are in there. So how would you describe it?
I think I would describe it as a house because there's lots of rooms,
Right?
but it's a whole. Yeah, that's such an interesting question. I love that.
I like to do what something that really helped me heal as an adoptee. I didn't counseling did not work for me. I did everything by myself.
Mm-hmm.
For me, visualization really helped me, and I think it can help a lot of adoptees. It can help a lot of adoptive parents where if you envision your mind like it's a house and you enter into it, you first enter into like the family room, which means that, you're obviously a very family oriented person because you are a parent, you are a mother, you are a father. And usually with the child, it's like you enter maybe into a hallway that goes upstairs or it goes into like a different room and stuff like that. Cause it's kind of like we as adoptees have all of these different avenues that we feel like we really need to navigate through before we get to the family room. Right. I
Right.
feel like parents are kind of more right there in the family room where, there's toys all around because the first thing on their mind is the adoptive child, So again, I am not an adoptive parent. I can only go by the things that my adoptive parent has told me, which I feel, I'm assuming, is hopefully the case for most adoptive parents, where adoptive children will sometimes feel that they themselves they know that they're different, right? And you touched on that with, your son being a different nationality than you, right? I know that you said you definitely want to again incorporate his heritage, make sure that he knows where he came from, and that's beautiful. And I guess what my question is, or my point that I'm trying to eventually get to, is when you look at your child, you see them as your child.
Oh, yeah.
It didn't matter that you adopted them. It didn't matter that they came from someone else. Talk to me about that mentality, because I feel that that is a mentality that adoptees just do not understand. They do not understand the concept of, well, I'm not born from you. How can you see me that way when I am not born from you? Sort of deal.
It's the craziest thing. Like I really look at AJ like I know I did not birth him and his birth mom is important. But like I feel like it is the weirdest thing. I don't know. I don't even know how to describe it, but I feel like I had him, you know?
Right.
Maybe that comes off wrong, but like that's just like the only way I can explain the love that I have for him.
Right.
I would do anything for this little boy, you know, like he he's so fun, he's so beautiful, he's so sweet. And even whenever like we struggle, like I just love him it is yeah, there's like really no words to describe how much like I love him. I even think about sometimes I'm like, you know, if I could have biological children, I don't know that I could love them as much as I love him. You know, I don't know that a fact because I don't have any, but like I it's just so crazy. I can't even explain the love that I have for him.
So what I'm hearing you say is basically that even though you didn't birth your son, you feel that he is your own.
Yes.
And again, for me, like that is a very positive thing. I'm not sure how other adoptees are going to take it, but I just want to take this time to say that I want the adoptees who are listening to this right now to understand that adoptive parents look at you through a lens of love. There is no malice or, ill will towards the adoptee community with this.
Right.
I know that, talking to adoptive parents can sometimes be a very sensitive issue for adoptees. And if that's the case, we're not trying to make it a sensitive issue. The purpose of talking about this in this sort of way is so that we can let adoptees know what different perspectives of adoptee parents are. A lot of adoptee parents that I have talked to say the exact same thing. And
Mhm.
when there is a struggle, usually it's because the adoptee feels that, well, you're not my biological mother, you're not my birth mom, you don't understand me, sort of thing. And I want adoptive parents to know that that is a very normal thing. It is something that I felt as an adoptee, and it is something that my adoptive parents felt, where they would always come back to me basically saying what you say, where it's saying, it doesn't matter that I didn't birth you. I love you no different than if I had. And I know that maybe that's not a common thing for other adoptees, but I know it is a common thing for many adoptive parents. What is your advice for one, adoptive parents? And what is your advice for adoptees? Like, in order to be open to this love that an adoptive parent has?
Yeah. Oh man. For adoptive parents, I don't know if this quite goes with your question. I think it's important to like sit with those bad experiences that other adoptees have had just to know like it's not always all sunshine and rainbows, you know? Like a lot of people are like, "Oh my gosh, it's so beautiful that you adopted." You know, like and it is, but like we did some of the hard work, but like we are on the receiving end. We didn't have the hard end, the hardest end, you know? So, like, I believe you guys, interviewed Sarah Joe. I think that's her TikTok. So,
Mm,
I responded to a TikTok comment that really affected me in a negative way, and my response wasn't in a in a way that was received in love, you know, like, by adoptees.
right.
And she made a TikTok about it, and she was angry, and we had a great conversation.
Mm.
I even went live with her. Like, it was just so, like, out of a mistake that I made, and she was upset with me. There was so much good that I learned from hearing her experience and hearing other people's experience that was not, it wasn't good, like, it wasn't good for them, and they don't love adoption sometimes. So it was good for me to sit with that and not be naive, like, adoption is all sunshine and rainbows,
Right.
adoption is struggle, and it's important to know that and not to ignore that. So, man, for adoptees, I mean, I just, like, you're so loved. Like, I, again, I'm like at a loss for words. I can't say that all adoptive parents love the best,
Mhm.
because they don't, like, and not all parents, not most of the time, your parent isn't going to love you the way that you need.
Mhm.
And that sucks, or give you what you need. I mean, I don't know. You're loved. You're so loved. And you're heard. You're heard. Like, there's so many, like, I try to, when I talk to people that want to adopt, I share with them, like, you need to be aware of this, that adoptees struggle. You can't just go into this like, I haven't gotten pregnant, so I'm just going to do this.
Mhm.
Like, no, you need to know all these things and then make your decision. Because nobody really said that to us. But I'm so thankful that I learned it. We would still would have adopted,
Right.
but I just think it's important for adoptive parents to know that.
So I think it's really important that other adoptive parents talk to each other, and they talk to each other in a way where it's being realistic. It's not only talking about like the sunshine and rainbows, but like you said, it's talking about the hard stuff because, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. There are different difficulties that adoptees face that adoptive parents also face. And that can make or break really the relationship between the adoptee and the adoptive parent. My experience is that when the adoptive parent doesn't necessarily understand or want to understand where the adoptee themselves is coming from, it leads to it begins to lead to that negative space in which a
Yeah.
lot of adoptees
There's going to be a
divide.
great divide.
Yes, that's where the great divide comes from, is because like adoptee parents, not all of them want to really hear and really see their child and where they're struggling. They kind of push it under the rug where they're like, well, I saved you, sort of deal. And,
Yeah, that's very negligent to think that way. Like,
right. Yeah. 100%.
yeah, because I mean, the adoptee might feel like, no, you didn't save me, you took me.
Right. It's important to be open-minded, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. You just gotta hear the hard stuff. I just think that that's so, like, you can't ignore reality. You can't ignore when someone's struggling. You got to sit with them, especially when it's your child.
Right. I have to be honest, like, coming on here, like, knowing you were an adoptive parent, like, I was kinda nervous because I don't I didn't expect you to be so empathetic and just so hyper aware of all of this. Like I kind of expected a bit of like resistance to the things I'm saying. So I'm actually caught off guard as an adoptee, and I hope it brings peace to any adoptees who are listening again, that there are adoptive parents out there who are this empathetic, this open-minded, this understanding. Maybe they don't understand your situation firsthand, but they want to help you work through your difficulty. I think it's again, I'm just so caught off guard. So,
Well, thank you so much for
yeah,
saying that. And like, that's, I don't really like put it out there that much, but like, that's, I feel like part of my mission that I didn't expect is to like speak for the adoptees and like
yeah,
the
advocate,
somewhat delusional adoptive parents, like,
right. And just
you
I
know,
mean, you're just advocating. You're literally here advocating, which is usually what the adoptees do for themselves. But to know that there are parents out there that will advocate is just really a beautiful and comforting thing. And it brings me a lot of comfort as well. You know,
I'm so glad
yeah.
for saying that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, of course. Like, thank you, honestly. And I want to get into talking about your beautiful son. Like, I'm so excited. So
Mhm.
tell me a little bit more about him. So how old is he? I think you mentioned he's 1?
Almost 1. Yeah, next month. So September 19th, he'll be 1.
Oh,
He's so funny. He's got the most beautiful curly black hair, beautiful brown eyes. He's full of energy. We practice climbing the stairs. I want to get a basketball goal so I can teach him how to play basketball before my husband can try to like get him to do football. He's a year old.
right. Get him like a little mini one. A little
Yeah, I did. He's so much fun. He's got the best personality. My sister, she's always like, I swear AJ is different. AJ is just the best. Like, he really is. Everybody that sees him and they say how beautiful he is, I'm like, he absolutely is. And I can't take any credit for that.
Aw,
He's just gorgeous.
literally. Oh, that sounds so sweet, honestly. And I want to talk about your wishes as the adoptive parent for your son. What are some of your wishes for your son?
That he feels included, that he never feels like an outcast, that he never feels like he wants to be white. That's like a huge thing for me. I don't ever want him to feel like he wants to be a white person,
Mm.
because I have a friend that he's African American, he's mixed, and he was raised around white people.
Mhm.
And there was a point in his life where he wanted to be white. And that hurts my heart because that's not who he, that's part of who he is. He's part white, but like I just really want him to feel like like him knowing who he truly is so important to us. Yeah, my prayer is that, like he walks in confidence in who he is and that he loves who he is and that my hope for him is that he's never afraid to ask me or to tell me when, like I already said, like that he's hurting or that he needs something. I'm sure there's going to be times where he's like, no, you're my mom. I'm not going to tell you that. But yeah, I hope he always feels like he can come to me or my husband with honesty.
That's so beautiful. Keep going. Sorry. I'm just like so overtaken with like the positive, beautiful emotions that are just coming out of this conversation.
Oh, thank you.
I'm
Thank you.
not something that I hear a lot, to be honest. So
That's so sad.
right.
Like I really want that for we can't live in this fairy tale land like and pretend like nothing affects people,
Right.
you know.
Right. Yeah, I definitely agree. And so he's 1 years old. I assume
Mhm.
yeah, now I'm 31, so it's been a long time. But so at what age does he start like pre-K, kindergarten?
So like 4,
Oh
5.
wow.
Yeah.
I thought it was like earlier. I don't know why I thought it was earlier.
So he's in daycare.
Okay, well that kind of counts for something, right?
Yeah. He's in school.
Yeah. Okay. So basically like is it like a surreal thing to know that is it surreal to have him finally after however long it's been, however long you've been fighting for
Yeah.
this moment? Like what was it like to actually have him in your arms and to know like
It's
he's safe, like he's home sort of thing?
right. And it was surreal. Like the adoption process is hard and long-ish. People get mad about that, but like I think it's necessary that it's hard and long and expensive because it's going to weed out the people that are just like trying to get a child quick, which is, do you know what I mean? Like I feel like there's some vetting that has to happen. If they just let anybody adopt, it's not going to be good.
Right.
But when I first held him, it was like, I can't even believe that this is happening. I didn't think it would. I didn't think that I, I don't know. Like, it's like, I couldn't believe that I know sometimes adoptees don't like whenever adoptive parents say like that he was a gift to us. But it's like, I don't really know what other words to say. Like, it was just like, whoa, like, what an amazing gift. I don't know. Yeah, I still like look back on it. It's like I can't believe that the Lord chose us to step to step in and raise him.
Right.
Yeah, it's still surreal. Like every time like I get home or I pick him up from daycare, it's the most exciting moment just to see him again. You know, like I hate dropping him off at daycare. It's the worst. We both want to cry. It's so fun being his mom.
Oh, like you're making my heart melt. Sorry. Um, I think a lot of adoptees, and again, I'm not trying to speak for all adoptees. This is like a disclaimer. But I think like the term get like the phrase of like you are a gift. And this is something that I actually say to people where it's like you yourself are a gift. Your presence is a present to the world. And
Right.
I don't necessarily look at it as cynically through the eyes. Like I
Hmm.
used to. I used to see it like, oh, I'm a gift. Like, what a selfish thing to say. And now I'm kind of looking at it at the age of 31, having really gone through everything I've been through, really coming to terms with it, and really understanding that it's like a life is a gift, in my opinion. So you as an adoptee, you as an adoptive parent, you yourself are a gift. And I guess people feel that maybe it's not a gift when they've been done wrong. They feel like they have been done wrong by the adoptive parent. And I feel like that's why a lot of adoptees maybe don't like that phrase. They don't like that sort of sentence, that
Hmm.
sentiment in general, because maybe it's kind of like what you were saying about how the vetting process should be very intense because not everyone should be a parent. Like, not everyone should be a parent, but not everyone should be an adoptive parent, sort of thing.
Yeah, because it has a lot of responsibility that is not the same as having your own child.
Right. Right. So talk to me about that. So what do you think the difference could be potentially?
Just what I observe,
Hmm.
so like when, and this is not to judge any like parents, but like whenever I see parents like complain, oh my god, like they're acting so bad, whatever, they're just complaining about their child. I'm like, I like my son is having a reaction for a reason. Why would I get mad at that? I don't know. I just feel like I have a different perspective than if it would have just like came naturally for me.
Hmm.
And my does that make
To
sense?
me, it does. Again, I've gone through all of my emotions. I've gone through everything in regarding myself, so I'm very at peace with my story. And I'm sure like maybe there are adoptees out there who might interpret this wrong. So basically, like what Kaitlyn is trying to express from what I am hearing is that there are parents out there who naturally complain about their child because I feel that that is a very natural thing to do where you're like, oh, it's very difficult, um, they're just trying to say that being a parent is hard, and being a parent to an adoptive child can also be looked at as difficult because the parent wants to try to help as much as possible. Sometimes they feel like maybe they're not doing a good job, which can really affect the parent. It can affect the parent, their mentality, their emotions, and things like that. They maybe sometimes parents feel like they're doing everything in their power, and to the adopted child it's just not enough because of everything that they have gone through as well.
Yeah. So I guess like more what I was saying, like kind of so when I see parents that have had their own children and say they're babies and they're acting up and they are so upset about that, like that they're acting up. And my view on that is like they're doing what is appropriate for their age. They're having a reaction or a meltdown for a reason. So how can you be upset with that? Maybe that's just because of like how I see things, but
Right.
I'm at a loss for how to describe it.
Yeah, it's a tricky thing because it's kind of like people who parent think of like kind of like what we were talking about like all along, that there's like this perfect world, and it's like things should be perfect, and when things are not perfect it's kind of like it's frustrating, it's upsetting, and not everyone knows how to react to that properly. And you're just trying to say, be open-minded, have an understanding that, the child is going through something difficult. You yourself are going through something difficult, but also keep in mind your child. Don't just make it all about you. That's what you're
Right.
doing.
Yes, that was perfect. Yeah. You wrapped it up perfectly. Yeah. Sorry, my dogs are crazy.
That's okay. I have a puppy. She's actually like sleeping, so like thank goodness for that. But
I'm so sorry.
That's okay. Maybe there's a guest at the door, like,
I don't know. They need to go away.
This is Kaitlyn featuring her dogs. It's okay. Don't worry. Don't worry. So let's see. I'm trying to think of like other questions. Like, what are some other things that you would like adoptees to know or adoptive parents to know? Like, what do you think is something that can help both sides? Because obviously, like, again, there is this divide. I feel like it's kind of like a very fragile thing to try to navigate through it. Don't you start barking now. I know you hear the dogs, but don't you start barking. Sorry, she came over. She's like, huh? Dogs? Yeah.
I guess I just like really want to press like for adoptive parents to like really just like educate yourself on the not so great side of how adoptees perceive adoption, and how what their life experience is like. Like, don't just look at the experience where they have nothing bad to say, because you don't know how your child is going to be affected by their adoption.
Mm-hmm. And how can they do that? Like, what do you think is the best way that they can do that?
Well, TikTok is a good place to start. I mean, there's some very, very honest opinions. There's great people on Instagram. I don't remember her name, but you guys interviewed her. I'll have to go see. But just listen to you. I will like y'all's podcast, like listen to the experiences of the adoptees. Because you guys have a very important voice.
Yeah. I think everyone has an important voice, like, I guess my concern is always like the adoptees feel that like the parents shouldn't have a voice. They don't want to hear from the parents, which I can understand. I can understand like why that is. But I think it's also important to listen to the adoptive parents, because if we can hear where they're coming from, try to really be open to it, maybe we as adoptees, as a community, can also grow and work towards not staying in our anger, not staying in our feelings of resentment towards adoptive parents, or trying to, my goal is always that adoptees move forward. It's important that we all keep moving forward. And by interviewing adoptive parents, by talking to them, by trying to be open-minded and having the adoptive parent be also open-minded and open to listening, I think it can really encourage that. And, each story is different. Each experience is different. Mine was a particularly negative experience, but it wasn't until after my adoptive mom's death that I was able to really understand where she was coming from and see and grow even more as a person, as an adoptee. I would like to take the time to thank Kaitlyn for coming on Chats with Kat. Everyone, stay tuned for another episode every other Wednesday on the Voice of Adoptees podcast. Always remember that someone somewhere is thinking of you, and you are not alone.